What's up?
Yeah, rocking out. Happy Independence Day, Bret. Woo.
Happy Independence Day, Nirmal. Hello, everybody. All right. This is technically a holiday for us in the U.S., but we're here anyway because we're super dedicated to the YouTubers.
That's how we roll. That's how we roll.
That's how we do it. We're technically we have plans later, but we're here for you now. So Nirmal and I were discussing what we're going to do in this show, and we don't know what we're doing. So
first of all,
Plot
can we
twist.
tell folks what they're watching? Let's go over what this is.
Do they know what they're watching? Do they care what they're watching? If you're watching live.
Yes, they do care. Come on.
If you're watching live, I mean, we got Martin in chat. We got this guy named Nirmal in chat. Jan, sorry for mispronouncing that. Robert's in chat. Hello, everyone. If you're in chat, say hi. Let us know you're here. We'll put your face on the screen for.
So this is a show that Bret and I do every week. and it turns into a podcast that you can listen to on your, your favorite commute, your favorite road trip. Uh, when you're getting some exercise. We were talking about that earlier today. Or on this fine day, if you're hanging out at the pool or doing like a little grilling, you could pop that podcast in and listen to the latest and greatest on DevOps, Docker, cloud, AI.
Or the latest one on AWS Graviton with Nirmal and his friends.
Nice. Yeah, that one was a
that
really
one
good
just
episode.
launched. Yeah.
Awesome episode.
This is a great example of like the classic sort of, we cover everything that can possibly touch a container, including the hardware. We don't have a lot of hardware shows, but I love hardware shows because, I mean, if you've been around, if you're a graybeard like us, you've been around long enough that we had servers and data centers. We had to rack these things.
Yes.
The cloud is a modern convenience, and we didn't always have that.
Yes.
And now, of course, there's the rumor. I don't actually think it's really the trend. I mean, we're going to ask Nirmal for the fact opinion, but everybody's like, people are leaving the cloud. I think that's complete garbage. I don't think anyone's leaving it. I think there was one person that everybody knows on the internet that left it, and then he probably still didn't completely leave it because they're probably still using cloud services on the side. They're just not using what you think of as like AWS.
Yeah,
anyway, everybody uses the cloud, so
yeah,
whatever.
And I encourage everyone out there to make the best decision for what they're trying to do. And this episode that we did with I believe Michael
Carlos
Fisher around with hey Carlos, thanks for joining. That episode we did with Michael Fisher around Graviton. It's a great way to if you've got a manager that's looking to reduce costs, increase performance by per dollar, check out that episode. We have some awesome tips on how to containerize your workloads and then also move them onto ARM processors where you can potentially save some money and get some really awesome performance. So check that episode out. Show also gets converted into YouTube.
The new YouTube podcast.
Yes.
So you don't have to watch this boring live version. Why not watch a highly edited where all of my ums and stutters, and it's basically just a show of Nirmal, and then I show up for like a second and go, yeah, and then I leave. And Nirmal or our guest talk, and you can find that on our YouTube channel. Not right now, because you're watching this live. You don't want to leave this live. I mean, you go over to the podcast area, which is kind of new. And then this is this show, the live thing. I know it's confusing. I should probably make it more obvious. And then this is the edited version. I should probably say like edited across it or something like that. Anyway.
No, the best of. It's the best of our live show. And
we only have two.
If you're here, let your friends and family and random people that you meet at awesome conferences know about our channel. And please like and subscribe so that you know when the next live show is happening, and also when these new clips drop, so that you can get a quick little bite of awesome knowledge that our guests throw down on our live show. The show we had a few weeks ago on MLOps, I believe. That was like,
yes,
it was chock full of awesome advice. I know that we had more questions than we could even answer in that show. So we're probably going to have another one around MLOps. And then another way to find out the latest and greatest within our communities is the Bret.news newsletter. So check out Bret.news, subscribe to that, get your friends and family to subscribe to it so they're always on top of the latest shows. And also your opinions on things, right, Bret? Like your take. Are they hot takes? Warm takes?
They're not usually hot takes. I'm too nice of a guy to do hot takes.
I know.
At least to the world. Like, if you're going to complain about something, complain to one person. Don't complain to 8 billion people or whatever. Like,
yeah,
nobody needs more complaints in their life. Yeah,
we're all trying to do the best we can. And if you want to hang out with like-minded folks and learn something and continue the conversation, check out the community. Where can they find that, Bret?
Right above us.
Oh, that's
right here.
We got to figure out we got the pointing correct.
Right there. So you can join our Discord server. I'm trying to. We members. 18,800. Yeah, so we're
Woo!
we're approaching 19,000. It's
Uh,
pretty hopping
that,
in there. We get
that's a big
spam.
barbecue.
You
That's
you
a
know
big barbecue.
that's a lot of people chowing down on 4th of July barbecue. Um,
Yes.
you're like popular, or at least somebody cares about you when you start getting regular spam, and we get not daily, but every other day maybe spam. It's nice. It's endearing. It's
It's
like
actually a pretty good
somebody
community.
cares. Yeah.
It's a very active place. I was asking some questions around AI, which obviously is a hot topic, and I'm sure there's more to come from us around that topic. But also just things that still exist, including Docker Swarm. Rumors of that are greatly exaggerated out there, but there's still users of Docker Swarm, and then of course Kubernetes, which is obviously near and dear to my heart and also Carlos Santana's heart, I'm sure. It was in the chat. Hi again. And just asking questions, help people being super helpful. Uh, more signal, less hot takes in the chat.
I like hot takes that benefit everyone. I mean,
I like
I
that.
don't like
Yeah.
I don't like shitting on other people's work, so I try not to do that, even though
Yeah.
sometimes it is frustrating. But especially in open source, when we all have ideas of what we want our open source to be, but the
Yeah.
execution is always harder than the idea. So, it's at least with a paid product, you feel like I paid for this, I have the right to complain. But with open source,
Yeah.
I mean, what rights do I don't have the right? I don't. I have the right to contribute, is what I have.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
So
do you have anything going on this month, Brett?
I I do. I mean, you and I have vacations galore. I got family visiting. I have. What else were you thinking I was going to say?
Uh, no, I mean,
I felt like that was a layup to something that I did. Like,
no, you're
I
good. You're good.
no,
Are you
I
planning on being at KubeCon this year, Brett?
I am at Salt Lake City. How about you?
Yeah, me too. So I'm, look forward to that. I think that's in November. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
like early November. So already starting to gear up for that, trying to figure out what we're going to do from an Amazon perspective, and also like can't wait to see you there. But this is probably the longest amount of time during the year that we don't see each other
Yeah,
in person, Brett.
that is true. The summer,
Over the summer.
the depths of winter. Um,
Yes.
that's the thing, is that when we go to the KubeCon in North America, it's like winter is coming. Well, I'll see you next year. I'll see you when the thaw happens.
Yes. And then
We so
I'll be at
you next
AWS
week.
New York Summit next week. So I was in DC Summit last week, which was awesome. I had a great time. I probably bumped into some of y'all if you were there, and I did an awesome talk on training foundational models on EKS and generative AI, which is the topic du jour these days, and had a great time meeting folks in the public sector space. And then next week I'll be at the New York Summit. So if you're in the New York area, if you're planning to attend the AWS New York Summit, let me know. I'll definitely come say hello and we can hang out a little bit. So been bouncing around different places in the U.S. and looking forward to taking a little break. But outside of that, I feel we haven't even gotten a debrief about Lisbon. I haven't even told you about all the awesomeness that unfortunately you missed out at Lisbon. Was just amazing. Sorry, Brett, but maybe we can kind of do a little show or segment around all the awesome things that the other Docker captains are doing
Yeah,
from that.
the Docker Captain Summit. I did miss that, and we haven't even talked about it, because every time we see each other, we're talking about what we're going to do on this show. So you're going to be in New York at the AWS event. Is it AWS Summit? Is it a summit?
Yeah, it's the New York AWS Summit. Yep.
Yeah, and then we have in Washington
that's
D.C.
right.
I'm actually thinking about going. I have not signed up. So those of you East Coast U.S. DevOps Days. I mean, if you're anywhere in the world with the DevOps Days, it's the thing to do. It's like, to me, it's one of the few community events that survived the plague that we just had. Oh, look at that, DevOps Days Raleigh right there. He just had his that I missed because I was traveling 2 months ago or last month. Very nice. Very nice. Got all the
Got all
swag
the
right
swag
there.
here.
And there's one in DC, and they're actually combining that with a Kubernetes community day. So
Yes.
you can do both
KCD.
in 3 days. I'm thinking of going because there's going to be some of our other Docker Captain friends and other Cloud Native Ambassador friends are going to be there, and just all these people. So I'm thinking about that in September. So you let me know in chat. By the way, if you're in our DevOps community right above us, we have a whole channel on conferences, and we try to self-organize the community, this little fun community at conferences. So often
Yes.
at Docker Cons or Kube Cons, or I haven't done it for a DevOps days yet because they're so regional. But all those big conferences, we get a group photo, we all do high fives, we talk, we go out for, the horrible lunches they have at these conferences, and we talk about our problems. So, you can come do that. You can also be a member on this channel. And one of the benefits of being a member, somewhere below there's a membership button. If you do the high fivers benefit, you get to come with us every month, and we essentially do a Zoom-like thing on Discord. I always do it the wrong way. Other way.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, so that high fivers group, and we hang out every month, and we just talk about the projects we're working on. We get people's opinions, including like Dan showing up and saying, "Hey, I'm using GitLab. What should I use for scanning containers?" GitLab has Trivy, JFrog has X-Ray, Docker has Docker Scout, and ECR has Amazon Inspector. What would you use and why? Use anyone is better than no scanning. That's an excellent response from Carlos.
And the next response from Carlos. Yeah, and the next response from Carlos is exactly right, which is scanning is not the be-all, end-all for it. It's just one piece. And so using the chain guard images as your base images, as your base image is definitely the first step. And then having any of the scanners. We had chain guard, was it a month ago now, Bret?
Yeah, a couple of months, yeah.
Yeah, a couple of months ago. So if you want to know more about chain guard, check out that episode. But essentially they create zero CVE, I think is their tagline, base images. And what's better than just scanning your images? Having nothing there when it does get scanned.
Right. I feel I'm going to make this statement. I think it's true. But to me, the chain guard for regular folks that are not in U.S. federal government, because that is an asterisk, for regular folks out here just doing our own container thing in our companies, I don't know of a single other organization that is reaching for zero CVEs on every single image they publish than ChainGuard. So you might be doing Alpine, that's great, but it has downsides. And ChainGuard made a variant of something like that is better and has more. It's a little harder to use. It doesn't have a built-in package manager by default. So if you need OS packages, you might have to go through a little bit more effort with their images. But that might also incentivize you to come up with a way to get those dependencies outside of the OS package managers, which honestly, I feel like containers, like one of our biggest claim to fame in container land was that we started a decade ago and you could bring your image. I mean, you could bring your app. Every single app worked because we had the OS package managers. But from where I'm sitting, maybe if there is a hot take today, it's that OS package managers need to get we need to get away from OS package managers and containers, because I feel like it is the hardest thing to deal with. It is so much harder than, let's just say, NPM, where that package gets a vulnerability. There's a open source vulnerability update, and then you just do an NPM. Like your next image build, assuming that you either asterisk the version in NPM, or if you pin it, then you update your pinned version, you get the newest version. But OS package managers have so much more complexity to them. Maybe you're on an old version of like Ubuntu or something, and that particular package isn't even in it. Or, there's just a lot there that people are dealing with. And ChainGuard solved that by saying, no OS package managers. Now, if you need those packages, which a lot of people do, especially if you're in the world of PHP, Ruby, maybe a few people still doing that in Node, although most people have moved completely to Node dependencies.
Python.
Java a little bit. But I find that like in these newer languages, maybe starting with Node and going forward, so we're thinking of Go and Rust, less and less reliance on OS package managers and more reliance on the package manager of that ecosystem.
Yes.
Which when I work with teams, trying to get to zero CVEs, the two biggest things are they're using official images from Docker Hub. I'm not going to blame Docker for this because they provided the platform for it, but it's really up to the teams that manage each OS, like each, not OS, but each OS or each, MySQL or Postgres or the Drupal team. It's up to those teams a lot of the time to reduce the vulnerabilities in their images. But they only go so far, partially due to some of the rules that Docker's put in place around they have to be Debian based. And so we had this great start 10 years ago, 11 years ago. But now we've all evolved. We've had multiple attempts, things like distroless images, Alpine-based images.
Yep.
But those of us that have been around a while, we've also found the limitations and problems with those things. And distroless has issues. I can't pin to an old version of an exact thing without knowing the SHA hash. There's a lot of these little things like this that kind of creep up as you start to implement this stuff. And I feel like ChainGuard is taking the hard road, the difficult path. And
that a lot of us
an open source project. Sorry, go ahead.
A lot of us would have assumed that it's not possible to do what ChainGuard is trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think containers enables it's like the right amount of tooling now exists and automation exists that allows ChainGuard to do the hard thing, which is create these images that are zero CVE, which is a more ideal state, right? It's a good starting point, an ideal starting point for a lot of workloads. And I want to plus one what you just said, Brett. I mean, you kind of said you feel like that's the truth. Yeah, I agree. And this is another attempt at it, and they're doing the hard thing, which is awesome. So we can all benefit from them doing the hard thing.
Yeah, and it's not even so much me saying like we all have to pay ChainGuard money. They have a great service for free, and they have even more features for paid. I don't even know what they charge for that, but not all of us can pay for our images, our base images. I feel like at the end of the day, if you're an enterprise, you probably should, because you were probably paying for OS support. Now you can pay for container base image support. And a lot of the projects that I work on can really just use those images right out of the box because they don't need OS dependencies. The challenge really is, I think to some people, is going to be convincing your organization to switch, right? So if you're using the scanners, like we were talking about how this whole conversation got started, start trying an alternate of whatever you're doing today, whether it's using the base images or Alpine or CentOS or Ubuntu, or hopefully you're not using CentOS, Fedora or Rocky Linux or whatever your base image might be, right? For the longest time, mine has been Ubuntu. But and Ubuntu is really small. They tend to patch more aggressively than Debian. So that's been for years my base image. But I'm slowly going to start, and I've got to figure out how I'm going to do this in the courses. I'm slowly going to be moving to ChainGuard images because, granted, they only had this like for the last 2 years. So this isn't something that's been around forever. And I kind of wanted to give it a minute to let them sort of settle. Yeah. But I feel like now they've got reputation in the industry, and they seem to be in here for the long haul. And of course, now a increasing number of our friends are actually working there, so that's a good indicator because they're still hiring. They're hiring great people. They're picking all the right people, it seems. And even when we had one of their co-founders and CEO on the show just a couple of months ago, he was like in meetings before the show talking about them patching more images for vulnerabilities.
Yes.
Maybe even ahead of those vulnerabilities getting accepted into those open source projects, which you know how much work that must be? I mean, that's an insane amount of level of work. You got to have all the expertise to patch all these. It's just, I mean, just wow. Just like, good job,
absolutely.
team.
And I think what I appreciate just at another level is they're pushing the industry forward with doing that, right? It bar raises everyone to do the hard thing, right? And actually start tackling these vulnerabilities. So massively long answer.
Yeah,
to an
that was
awesome
a great question. It's a great question.
And it's something that even the experts and even folks that have been doing this a long time, like these tools and these approaches are constantly changing. And so, like you just mentioned, Brett, like you started off with putting everything inside the container, very thick, heavy base images, the full OS. Started realizing that that's probably not the best approach for what should be inside a container. Starting to remove packages, remove SSH, or remove cups or whatever other packages are hanging out in your Docker image.
Exactly.
Going down the
image magic,
thin image magic, getting thinner thinner base images, thinner operating systems, light versions, Alpine, and now we're getting to a more proactive state, like you just mentioned, where CVEs that are not even in the pipeline yet or reported yet are being tackled, which as an industry is being more proactive about this stuff is a good direction to go through, to go in. So that's the answer, is start with your base images before scanning is important though. And you want to know what's still going on inside your container images, but
right. Because even if your base image, sorry, I was going to,
of course. Yeah.
Even if your base image has 0, your app may not.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't.
Yeah, definitely. Probability wise, for sure. Right. It's not 0 vulnerabilities, but
so Robert, by the way, Robert's saying in chat, he wanted to go to Raleigh, couldn't get his act together. If I can make to DevOps Days DC, my coworker in the DC area will probably go. Absolutely, come to maybe that's my motivation. Jump into the Discord server if you can.
Yeah.
Wave your hand in the conference chat room saying you're going to whatever conference you're going to, and hey, that's a motivator. I mean, if I have friends going, it's more likely for me to go to a conference because this stuff all ends up on the internet anyway, so you really go for the people and the community.
So I will likely be up there, Brett. So
okay.
Oh, but that means
I don't know.
I don't know if I'm worth it enough.
You know what that means? We're going to a conference. Okay, so
oh my God.
So Robert even said even in the federal space we don't expect a 0. Yeah, and that's the reality, right? 0 is so rare that you really have, it's even harder with monoliths, legacy apps that have, I've seen apps just even in the last few years. I worked with a company that they were trying to move, I think they were Ruby. They were trying to move to the latest Ruby, but they had this dependency on this old version of Microsoft's MS SQL database driver that was OS based that couldn't support, they had this support matrix that, because it was a monolith of all these crazy dependencies, so many dependencies. It took 10 minutes to build the dependencies. Yes. And so they're kind of stuck. They have a lot of work to move to removing all and that's their fault. They didn't, it's not the dependencies. It's not the OS dependencies. It's not the OS base layer. It's them adding dependencies to their app and not keeping them up to date. So
that's how we build apps, right?
Yeah.
You import kitchen sink and go from there, right?
Right. And I love dependencies myself because if I make apps, I'm like, oh, there's somebody made that already. Okay, boom, add. That's to me that when NPM came on the market 15 years ago, and I was just getting into Node, pre 1.0, I think it was 0.6. I was building my startup on it because we wanted to go fast and break things, and that was what's better than using a beta piece of software with beta dependence. But NPM was this thing where everyone was adding every dependency through this package manager, and it's my actual source code was 10% of the entire source code. Yeah. So I had to write very little, and now today that's kind of normal. That's expected. We all write these apps, and so much of it is already done for us. So this is the world we live in.
I think with machine learning and the Python, a lot of all these apps being written in Python, those machine learning libraries and dependencies are just
massive
landmines everywhere. I remember with Camilla, another Docker captain, we were playing around with LangChain, trying to build some containers with it, and just a minor bump in the Python version broke everything. It just everything, and we started with one Python version, and we were just counting down the minor versions until stuff worked again, and it's that's exacerbating the same situation again. So I think it ebbs and flows, but there's this balance between the acceleration and being able to build these apps more quickly, and also making sure that the package bloat is maintained, or is kept in check.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's there is no easy way for long-term code
no.
maintenance other than just doing the work, the toil, and the maintenance backlog. Real quick, by the way, we're wrapping up this chain guard and the secure images thing. I just want to point people to some resources in case they're like, "Hey, you're talking about this chain guard thing, but I don't know anything about it." So you can go to Chain Guard's website and look for
Yep.
chain guard images. I will put this in chat. This is their sort of interface for viewing all the images, finding the images that you want to have. They don't have near as many images as you will find on Docker Hub, but they are increasingly, like, they're adding more and more things. There's a lot here. They have 757 images now, which is crazy because I think the official Docker images are still sitting around 200. So they have so much more. So I don't know this for a fact, but let's just assume they have all the images that you would use as official Docker images and then some, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're maintaining those. They're not relying on others and then just shrugging and saying, "We provided the platform. You figure out how to make it secure."
Yep.
So I really, really appreciate them doing that work. Here's the link to that. And they recently this year, actually, Nirmal and I kind of announced it as a part of a news segment earlier this year. They announced that their images are now on Docker Hub,
Mm-hmm.
so that if you can always use them from Chain Guard, but if you
Mm-hmm.
want, if you're used to using Docker Hub, maybe you're paying for Docker Hub maybe, and you want to get more use out of your bandwidth and all that stuff that you're paying for already, or maybe that Docker Hub registry is approved for use in your company, but maybe Chain Guard's isn't. So now you can get all these images here, and all you need to do is just search for Chain Guard. They are an entire organization on Docker
Yes.
Hub, so they won't look like official images. You'll just have to go find the Chain Guard organization, and then every single image is going to be under that. So you just find this, and then this is this massive list of. It seems like they don't have them all here. So it says 478, and on their own website they have 757. So maybe some of the new ones haven't made it over. Anyway, whichever way you want to do it, I don't have a preference. I just kind of do whatever my feeling is of the day. Like, and I grab the SHA hash.
No one tells you what to do, Bret. No one tells you what to do.
I'm not going to stick with anybody's registry unless they pay me a lot of money to do it, and nobody's going to pay me money to do that. So. I will go wherever the hot images are, wherever the good images are. I mean, you got to go to Microsoft's MCR or whatever for theirs. So yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Good questions.
There's another question
Good
we
questions.
had. We had another question.
Oh, we
early
had
on.
one.
Hopefully, let's see. Pubudu. Sorry, I'm mispronouncing that name. It's hard to. Pubudu. Sorry if I mispronounced that. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. Can we have a podcast on Linux processes? How does Linux work? Wow. So I'm not that guy. I know how containers work on Linux.
Yes.
And I could talk about namespaces and C groups and virtual interfaces and stuff like that, but
yeah, it's been a while since we've done like a how do containers work kind of show, right?
Yeah,
it's been a while.
I don't even know if we've ever truly had let's get nerd level explaining. I mean, to me, I think I listed on a video that's somewhere on this YouTube, I listed sort of the major things that are used inside. I listed like 7 or 8 things that are Linux kernel features used by Docker and other container runtimes. And it was like namespaces, C groups are the 2 that we all think of. Then there's also VES of virtual interfaces as a part of the Ethernet substrate or whatever you want to, of the kernel. And then there was like 2 or 3 other things that I had forgot about. I mean, IP tables is a good one for Docker. I'm not sure if everyone uses IP tables. I would think they'd have to. Anyway, yeah. So there's a list of technologies there. So, I am not the guy to go like learn about how IP tables. Like, I can't write IP tables from memory. I have to Google them. So you don't want to learn from me.
Maybe we should. Yeah. So first of all,
but maybe Nirmal is. I mean, I'm throwing you under the bus, but maybe Nirmal's that guy.
I could be that guy. I could be any guy you want me to be, Bret. But I think we might. You know, we know some folks like Phil Estes, Liz. Liz does an amazing. She's done these amazing sessions at DockerCons in the past of like writing a container engine in like 100 lines of Go and things like that, where it kind of steps through all the hooks and interlocks with the Linux kernel, that all the features of the Linux kernel that support the existence of a container, right? And what container actually is. I know that there's been some big changes with respect to new versions of C groups, Linux. The more modern Linux kernels have been coming out that uh, the underpinnings of containers have changed probably pretty in a big way since the last time we've done like a deep dive on the hook between the Linux kernel and containers. So maybe it might be worth putting on the schedule, Brett, to maybe get someone to dive deep on the Linux kernel internals that support containers. But I'm assuming that the question was oriented toward Linux in general, which we could probably spend a decade going through every component of Linux.
Right, and I'm definitely not that guy. Like talking
No.
about the different file system formatting options and like the pros and cons of each, and
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much there that moving from IP tables, which is a little bit legacy now. Like, there's just so much to Linux that I just don't have. Like, I used to actually be this guy on Windows more than I was Linux. Like,
Yeah.
I was the Windows low-level troubleshooter and used all the sysinternal tools from Mark Rosanovich, and I just don't have to do that anymore. I mean, like, to me nowadays, if my server misbehaves, I throw it away and replace it with a new one, and that new one usually fixes the problem. So I'm an ephemeral sysadmin. That's what that's what I'm going to call myself, the ephemeral sysadmin, because I don't want a machine. I just rebuilt my Ubuntu machine in the house because I had upgraded it from like 1804 to 2004 to 2204, and it was feeling really crusty. So the actual reason I had to do it is because it would fail the upgrade to 2404. So I had to rebuild it, but I kept thinking to myself, I need a more ephemeral way to figure this out. Like, I shouldn't be building these VMs from scratch
doing that
anymore.
approach, though, Brett, doing that approach means that you have to have very solid CI/CD and automation tooling, and you have to be disciplined about using them, right? Like,
yes,
that's a the approach of kicking out bad servers that are misbehaving and replacing them takes a lot of discipline on other parts of the process, and both tooling and your own discipline for sticking with infrastructure as code and the configuration elements that you have. So that is a good approach too. But I'm not that guy either with respect to all the Linux internals. That being said, I'm going to combine this with another question. So there's a question from Vibov. Do recruiters appreciate good deployed projects for freshers, which I'm assuming like entry level roles? Yes. Also, personally, that's the best way I learn something new is by doing a project or having some end goal in mind. Some use case or some outcome that I'm looking to do, and then working backwards from that, figuring out what I need to do or injecting something new so that I'm forced to use it to solve that problem. So with respect to the previous question about learning Linux internals, the best way for, in my approach would be to have an end goal in mind, which is, maybe you want to run an application, maybe you want to try some machine learning out, and then figure out what parts of the Linux system you need to know to support that, and not just like copy and paste something that's out there, but really go through and start building that from the ground up. That's the way I learn best, and likely the way that you, Brett, learned a lot of these things is just by doing.
Right. It's hard to learn something when you don't have a use for it. I've always learned. I've called it just in time learning, JIT learning,
Yes.
Because like nothing makes you learn the network interfaces more than when you're having persistent networking problems in a data center that you probably created yourself, right? So like back in the Windows days, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you had a networking problem or what seemed like a networking problem with an app. You just updated the networking driver from the company because it was probably a new version. But nowadays, that this is all built into the not just the kernel, but also like the distribution you're using. If we're using the cloud, we certainly don't have any control over network drivers. Everything's like software anyway, so like it's just, There's probably no
Yeah.
network. It's all software. It's all imagination. It's just not really
Uh,
there.
you remind me that networking, there are some places that always show up as something that one needs to know.
Yeah.
And networking is definitely probably the number one thing on that list. There's that kind of old quip that was like, if there's something wrong, it's usually DNS, TLS, or SSH, or
Yep.
and so knowing networking, knowing DNS, knowing TLS, those parts of Linux, or how Linux implements or uses, or where those components are in a Linux operating system, and how they work, probably can't go wrong with just upping the knowledge with respect to networking,
Right.
and those other
Networking
components.
and yeah, like you said, learning a little bit of Linux, and
Yes.
then right after learning Linux, I would learn networking. I would learn as much about network honestly as I could.
Yes.
I need to actually find if anyone has in chat has a recommended course on networking or a recommended YouTube video that they've actually watched all the way through. I would love some recommendations because I get questions in the courses and everything from people that come into Docker and don't have this fundamental understanding
Hmm.
of cloud, Linux, and network, or
Yes.
specifically IP-based networking, because we're not really using any other protocols yet on the internet. Which, by the way, how amazing is that? We've had like a 40-year run on a single networking protocol, and we've never even
Yeah.
moved to IPv6, which didn't change everything. I mean, it was still the same
Yeah.
fundamentals of IP, but like the world is running on something that we invented in this. DARPA, I think, is one that created TCP/IP and all that back in the
I
70s,
think
maybe 60s, 70s.
part of it came from DARPA, part of it's Xerox PARC, and like Ethernet, and yeah,
Yeah.
I might have actually had the opportunity to meet some of the original people that created IP TCP, a long
Yeah,
time
we
ago,
need to
which
get
is
some we
pretty
need to get
awesome.
some throwbacks on the show. Robert's
Yeah,
saying
but
that
you're
AWS
right though.
education.
Like, and I think one thing that, especially with our, like, the topics that we talk about, cloud, DevOps, containers, Kubernetes, a good chunk of the functionality that these tools are doing is abstracting away some of the networking stuff that's happening. But at the same time, when there are problems that arise with these systems, it's typically, this is a
Yeah.
broad generalization. It's not a hot take, because if you have any experience doing operations and system admin work, you'll probably be nodding along to this. But networking is usually where those rough edges and sharp edges show up, because that's a lot of the automation that, like, Kubernetes, right, provides, is networking overlays, and for
Yeah.
example, and what containers is doing with respect to the firewall when you're running a container. Like, that's often hidden, but you need to know that what it's doing, because that's when you have issues, that's typically where it is, because
Yeah.
you want to make sure that your users can actually reach your services, right? And so, like, unless you're doing some kind of batch processing or non-exposed workloads, most of our workloads have some kind of IP, internet networking,
Yeah.
service exposure, and that's, you kind of need to know that kind of stuff.
Even if you're just using Docker and Kubernetes on a single machine, you're dealing with networking because that's how all your pods and that's how all your containers talk to each other.
Absolutely.
So even if they're on the same machine, there's simulated networking there. Nirmal and I actually have to end the show earlier this week.
This week.
This year's 4th of July show is going to be short.
Yes.
So we're going to rapid fire these last few questions.
Awesome.
So first off, Martin is asking. I'm trying to get the link. Martin is asking, "Hey, getting Liz Rice on the show is a great idea. We've already had her on 3 times."
Yes.
So she usually comes.
When's the
on
last
once
time?
a year. Yeah, well, it was a year ago. She came on last year. We talked about Cilium and eBPF last year. You were not on. I don't think you were on the show at that time.
No. I think I came
I
on
had her
right
on
after
4
that.
years ago. Was that?
Yeah, I think I started co-hosting right like around or after that show. But
Yeah.
hey, it's been a year. Sounds like we need to get
So we're
Liz
gonna have
back
to-
on the show.
Yeah, and she's great, and we always have a good time. I always learn something. It's fun that you can actually go back in time and see that which company, which awesome bleeding edge Linux networking or security company that she's working for based on the T-shirt she wears on the show.
Yes.
She's still at Isovalent now, which is the eBPF company. They're building Cilium, which I heard someone recently say is the new de facto CNI, which I had not. I was coming to that for my own opinion, but I wasn't sure if that was the opinion, and having someone else validate that is a pretty interesting approach.
Yes.
B. Mitch says happy 4th, by the way. And Martin says she's
Happy
great.
Fourth.
I agree with all of that. Next rapid question. Have you ever talked about dev desktop environments using Ubuntu and recommended tools? That's a great idea. We have not. I am not a all-day Ubuntu desktop user, although I do have one. I do sort of, I mean, being on Mac is pretty close, but I do have actually apps that I use every day for development, like Fork for my Git, that is not on Linux. So we should probably think about a Linux show for that. That's a great idea. Next question. I'll throw this to you. Oh man, I'm going to mess this name up. I can't do it.
So that's what we were just answering about doing projects. So yes, recruiters do look at projects. It's just overall a constant. It's a good attitude to have around learning through project-based learning, just-in-time learning, just-in-time training is a good approach. And yes, it is valued. We, as someone that does interview folks and helps mentor folks, yes, do projects. Because you also learn, you'll be able to represent your expertise. Next one.
Yeah. Put it on GitHub. And whatever you're doing, put it on GitHub. Make a blog, however you want to do a blog, wherever you want to put it, make your blog. And so make sure the recruiter knows you have a blog, you have all this stuff in GitHub, you put it, you did it all in open source, everyone knows about it. That's how you, without an employer, that's how you prove your knowledge, really.
Yes.
Yeah. That and
doesn't AWS Education have something on networking? Yes, they do. I just posted a link. We have a whole entire certification on advanced networking that also it's tied to a bunch of training. Some of that is free training, so check that out on the link I provided. 2 questions. In your opinion, we're doing this fast, Bret.
Yep.
In your question, what is the best way to store secrets in cache at cloud in a DevOps perspective? Do you find it interesting for a pipeline to have integrated tests like Test Container? So the first question, using a tool like Secrets Manager, using something, if you're using Kubernetes, like external secrets, so that you can have a more standardized way of representing those secrets in your pod. That's the typical way we see secrets managed, is using the orchestration tool. Then backed, the actual secrets are stored in something that is hardened and built for that. So AWS Secrets Manager is a good option. There's also HashiCorp Vault we see a lot of my customers use, but use something that's geared toward storing secrets. Don't just put them in environment variables. Don't just store them on the file system. Don't roll your own. Please don't roll your own secrets management.
Right. If you don't have
number one,
I was going to say, if you're not, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. Apologies.
That's the number one area that people get wrong, and then they get their secrets leak, and you're in for a bad day.
You have a pen tester, and that's the first thing they go for, especially if you have a red team or if you hire.
Don't store your secrets in GitHub.
Unless it's a sealed secret. I was going to say, if there is one alternative, if they have a cloud, use the cloud secret storage. If you have Kubernetes, you're putting them in Kubernetes, although that's probably not the final end-all solution that you will have for all secrets, because not everything's in Kubernetes. And so I'm repeating everything you just said. If you don't have the team and expertise to run Vault, then look at sealed secrets. If you're a small team, if you're a solo DevOps person, sealed secrets is a way for you. This is mostly if you're like in a data center, or if you're in a tiny cloud that maybe doesn't have its own secret storage, although that's pretty rare. You can use sealed secrets. But to me, if you're in the cloud, use the cloud's features. That's why you're with that cloud. That's why you're paying the premium of being in that cloud, is to use all that wonderful stuff that often doesn't even cost any money.
So next question. Carlos is saying, do not use sealed secrets. Do not use sealed secrets. Okay. Carlos, please put in why. I was also kind of trying to allude to that, but there are use cases for it, in the sense that if you have specific workflows, but if you're using if you're in the Kubernetes ecosystem, all that, use like the cloud services for
that's gonna be a hot take. That's gonna be a conversation.
Carlos, put the hot take in there. Put the hot take in the chat. I'd love to get your take.
I
The
did
other
have a.
question
Oh, sorry.
is test containers, and yes, like
Yes.
I know we're going fast.
Good. Do it.
From a DevOps perspective, do you find it interesting? Yes. I think we're just at the beginning days of the test containers evolution that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot more focus on automating and using containers to do that automation. Tests are important, and it's also a very sticky point in a lot of folks' CI/CD pipelines and DevOps tooling. So yes, my perspective is start taking a look at it, see where it can fit into your workflows. How much time do you spend learning LLMs? Oh, go for it.
Before you go, I was just going to add one more thing to that. If you look at it this way, when you think about testing, you can only go as fast in terms of updating deployments every day or every hour, all that stuff, changing your code and rapidly releasing it. You can only go as fast as your tests provide you the assurance that the test won't break, that the new release won't break things. So if you don't have good testing, you can't go fast. You will have more failures, and it'll look bad on your team. And people, the organization will start blaming you for going too fast. Well, speed isn't actually the problem; it's the lack of better testing. So when you find yourself failing at finding the problems before, basically the rules with the teams that I work with, the best teams, they have a failure one time, they create tests to ever prevent that failure from happening again. Every time you have a failure in some fashion, it's an opportunity to improve testing and redundancy. So go there. Okay, next question.
I can't even think of a better way to end our show.
Okay.
Than that statement. The absolute last thing, how much time do you spend with you, Carlos? Or how much time do you spend learning LLM Gen AI these days? With you, Carlos, all the time. I think we talked about this at the MLOps show and some of the previous shows. Don't sleep on Gen AI and LLM tools. They're there. People are using them. So try them out. Yes. Alrighty. We got to go celebrate the independence of our fine country. We did it, Brett. We did it.
We did. And there's like, in Max, they have this little effect, and there was like a fireworks effect, but I think I turned it off. So I was going to do it at the end of the show, and I can't because I turned it off. All right. Well, thanks you everyone for being here. Like and subscribe. Do all those things. There we go. Oh, and I think it froze your video. That's perfect. That's perfect. So that's a perfect way for you to end, by the way. That is fireworks Nirmal right there. Yes. Well, thank you all for being here. We're going to be live again next week, another Q&A week. That's right. We're doing them back-to-back right now because it's the heat of summer and we're too busy. So we're having Q&As. So come back on Thursdays, and we'll see you in the Discord over there.
Yes.
Over there. Come hang out with the Discord.
Happy Independence Day, everyone.
Happy Independence, everybody.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.